Welcome back to another review, and welcome to the inside of the Mercedes-Benz EQS 450 Plus. Now that probably doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people. So this is essentially the all-electric SUV S-Class. So EQ meaning the electric variety of cars from Mercedes-Benz, the S being the S-Class, and this is an SUV. So it's bigger, it's got a lot more room in it, and it's a lot more versatile than a saloon or a sedan. And yes, I said it's all electric, so that means there's no engine, there's no fuel, there's nothing like that. This is powered by electric motors as well as a very, very big battery. It's a 108 kilowatt hour battery. That just means the amount of energy it can store inside, which is very big, especially in the electric world at this day and time. I think that's probably amongst some of the biggest you can get in South Africa. But what does that actually mean? What it means is you can essentially get around, or actually just over 500 kilometers out of a single charge. And that's very possible. It's not just them saying that, or they've said between 500 and 600, but I'm comfortable to tell you 500 because what I've been kind of averaging now and what I've driven and what's left, the maths is doing it, and the maths is saying 500 Ks, which is very impressive. Okay, Greg, well, that's all good and well. It's got batteries and kilowatt hours and it's got all of that sort of stuff. But what does that actually mean for a car? Like, how fast is it? What is its power numbers and all of that? So it's a lot. So you're getting about 265 kilowatts and 800 Newton meters of torque. So that's a hell of a lot of torque. It's a lot of kilowatts. And when you put your foot down, it's instant. And that's one of the huge and biggest advantages of going electric, is that your power gets to you like this. Now, having all of that power underneath your foot is very addictive and very tempting. So people need to also be very careful when driving electric cars, because when you put your foot down, the car goes. So there's no time for boost to happen and things like that, or for you to change your mind that you don't want to be going fast. It just happens. So be careful if you ever get a chance to drive an EV, they can catch you by surprise. But also driving an EV, as I've mentioned, is very different to a normal ICE car. And ICE is an internal combustion engine, which is a normal petrol burning or diesel burning car. So as I've mentioned here, you get your power instantly. We work in kilowatt hours in terms of the battery sizes. But there's also ways that you can drive to recoup the lost energy in your car when you're driving. So when you're braking, normally that friction would get lost in a normal car. But here, that friction and the energy used to stop the car gets converted back into energy to fill up the battery again. Now that's not going to fill the battery completely, but it's just going to add little bits of energy back in for you to use along the way, rather than it being wasted. But in the car here, you've got different types of recuperation you can use, and you use them by the paddle shifters. Now, as it being an EV, there's no gears. If you didn't know that, there's no gears in an EV at all, because it's a motor that's either going forwards or backwards. That's it. So it's like a remote control car or one of those tiny go-karts. It's essentially the same concept. So here with the paddle shifters, you're now controlling the regeneration or the recuperation, and how strong the effect of it is. So if you go onto the -1 over here and you go take it back to its furthest point to strong recuperation, that's then when you take your foot off of the accelerator, the car's going to slow down like it is now. And then all of that energy gets put into the battery. But it also then means you're driving now with one pedal. So you drive, your left foot's now off everything, as it normally would be. But now you're driving with your accelerator, and then you take your foot off the accelerator, you don't brake, but the car slows down. So now all you're doing is on, off, on, off, on, off. It's a weird concept, but once you start driving like this, it becomes a very cool way of driving. Very easy, very natural, and I enjoy it a lot. But if you press the other paddle shifters here, it changes the recuperation to then essentially over here, the next one would be normal. So it's not going to be as strong of a braking. And then the next one's going to be no recoup, so you aren't going to save any energy. And the car's going to just coast along like a normal car would be when you put it into neutral. And there's also an intelligent recuperation. So if you hold in the far right paddle shifter, it changes it to intelligent. And now the car is going to decide the best way for you to recuperate that lost energy, especially when in adaptive cruise control. It's going to sense the cars in front of you and it's going to know when you're going to brake, and it's going to change and charge accordingly. It's a little bit too complicated for me. I don't like that one. I always, as soon as I get into an EV, I put it into strong recoup and I drive with one pedal, because that's the only way you should drive an EV, in my opinion. Now, sorry if that was a lot to take in, but it's important for me to explain to you guys how an EV works and the different technologies that come with it. But now we've spoken about the technicalities of an EV, we've spoken about the power, we've spoken about the speed, but now let's talk about what makes it the EQS. So the S part of that being S-Class. Now that's going to be the luxury part of the car, the finer details, the comfort and the drive quality. Now to start that off with, this car has got air suspension, so this is probably up there with one of the most comfortable cars I've driven ever. It's so smooth, it's so soft, it just glides along. Yes, there's going to be bumps in the road and there's going to be speed humps and things like that, but it's going to kind of tackle them in an S-Class way. So the air suspension is going to absorb all of those bumps and imperfections and give you the nicest and smoothest drive quality you'll ever feel. But on the inside, you've got a beautifully laid out dashboard design, and they've even spec'd this car with the hyperscreen. Now this is what Mercedes-Benz has been flexing on for a while now. It's this huge glass panel that runs from the driver's side all the way to the passenger side. The driver's got their digital display. There's this huge infotainment cinema in the middle here. The passenger's got their own screen too, and they can control anything in the car that the driver can as well. And if they've connected everything up in the right way, they'd also be able to watch Netflix, watch YouTube, do anything that they want on that side with their own earphones and everything. So they'll be in their own little world while the driver's in their own world too here, navigating their own stuff on the center display. Now, it's not my favorite feature. I do think it's a little bit of a gimmick, because once you've seen it a few times, you kind of get used to it and you're like, I don't think I would have probably paid 150,000 Rand for this option, although it looks badass. There aren't going to be a lot of cars that have this, but I think if you do have it, it is going to obviously add a lot more value to your car, and it's flipping cool to look at. That's all I can say. And being an EV, there's going to be a lot of man-made materials in here too, because they aren't going to be using a lot of animal products unless you spec it like they have in this one. So here you do have the leather seats. They're soft, they're supple, they're comfortable, but normally you would get the man-made leather that's going to come with the EV, just like there is on the sides of the doors as well as across the whole dasher. That's the man-made material that comes from Mercedes-Benz and is part of what they're using on their cars now going forward, also just trying to be nicer to the environment. It also comes with an upgraded and super bougie ambient lighting system in here. Now, if you've seen a Mercedes-Benz, you know it's got ambient lighting, but in here it takes it to another level. It's multicolored completely through and through. And it's also animated, so depending on what you're doing in the car, if you're on that setting, it'll also change and blink and flicker depending on if you're using your accelerator, if you're braking, if you're coasting. It does different types of animations too, so it's very advanced. It looks very cool, and again, it's a pretty big flex, especially if you're getting a car like this. You might as well just add it to the list of things that you're going to put in here. Some other things that are standard is the entry-level Burmester audio, which is very, very good. I've got nothing to really complain about, but you do obviously have the option to upgrade to the 3D Burmester audio surround system, which again is just top notch. It's absolutely brilliant. So if you are going to spec it, I would definitely choose that. And as part of the bigger EQ designs, you've also got this really nice laid out center over here with, again, more of the man-made like Alcantara materials across the center dash. You've got this wood grain finish on the center console. When you open it, you've got your wireless charging, you've got your drink holders, and just some additional storage with USBs down in the center too. And then under the armrest, you click this, you've got a massive bin down here in the middle, again with USBs, because now you're up to, I think, about 4 just in the front of the car. You get a panoramic sunroof, and you get these seats that are electronically adjustable. They've got memory function, and you can heat them up, so they're going to come in handy this winter. And then onto the rear, where the S in EQS matters the most, because S-Class, and it definitely does, because there's heaps of legroom back there. The seats are comfortable. The air suspension gives it a very comfortable ride too, and you've got as much as you can do up front, you can do back there. So your seats are electronically adjustable. You've also got separated climate control. there's a lot you can do back there, and you'd have a very comfortable drive if you were a passenger in the rear too. So it definitely lives up to the S-Class in its name. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any built-in fridges or a whole individual center armrest with additional tablets and things like that. And I'm pretty sure you can spec them accordingly. But right here, this is, I think, as basic as you can get in terms of the backseat entertainment or the setup that you can get in the EQS. So I do think this definitely lives up to the fact that it is an S-Class. It might not be the standard, ultimate, most luxurious S-Class that you've ever seen, but it's definitely comfortable. It's definitely oozes the luxuriousness and the premiumness that you expect from an S-Class. And just some other features that I think just top that and make it what it is just how easy it is to drive in terms of it being a big car. It's also able to make a very tight turning circle, and maneuvering this big SUV is also pretty easy because you've got the rear axle steering. So when you're driving at slower speeds and you're turning, the wheels work in the opposite direction to which way you're turning to make it turn obviously a lot sharper. And when you're driving, the wheels then move in the same direction as the wheels in front to get you exactly where you need to be at any time, any place, depending on however you're driving this car. Whether it's having fun with the car, chauffeuring people around, or even just going off-road, you're able to drive the car to its best potential because you've got the rear axle steering to get the car wherever you need it. But something needs to be said about how this car comes to life at night. Now, one thing's for sure is that they've designed this EQS SUV and the EQS range and the EQ cars to really stand out at night. So from the outside, you can see how the interior is just shining from the ambient lighting. On this EQS SUV, you can also see how they've lit up the running boards. So the running boards themselves have got lights that light up at night, so you can also see them. The handles have got lights, so when they pop out, they also shine a light at the same time. And you've also got the Mercedes-Benz logo that lights up the ground when you unlock the car. So you've got the lights on the ground, you've got the handles, you've got the running boards lighting up, you've got the daytime running lights, you've got a light bar at the back, and you've even got the ambient lighting. Oh, it's a light show, and it's definitely a car you cannot miss at night. Within the infotainment, there's also different driving modes. It's called Dynamic Select, and I'll go here because I'm used to it, but it's down here. So in this EQS here, you've got your Dynamic Select button and any other buttons that you can use as shortcuts to get to your menu instead of having to go through it. So for Dynamic, you select this here, and you can choose between Eco, Comfort, Sport, and Individual. There is also an off-road function, and because this car's got 4MATIC, it's got all-wheel drive, you can take it off-road if you want to. It's got the air suspension, so you can lift it up slightly too, and you'll be able to at least do some light off-roading. I don't think anyone who's spending this amount of money on a car is going to take it off-road, but you still can, and you've got a whole off-road section within the infotainment, as well as your own bespoke off-road menu in front of the driver if you do select that particular function. But speaking of the price of the car, there's two that you can choose from. There's this 5-seater, there's also the 7-seater, and they start from just over 2.7 million rand. But if you are going to get it with the AMG line, that's going to cost you just over 2.8 million rand. It's a lot of money, but again, you're buying an S-Class, you're buying a Mercedes-Benz SUV, you're buying into the future technology, so it's a lot of money. But in terms of what car prices are at the moment, it's hard to tell you what is expensive and what isn't expensive, because it is what it is. Taxes aren't playing in our favor. The government isn't playing in our favor in terms of EVs either. Where other countries, they give you a tax benefits, in South Africa, they charge you more. So that's why EVs are so expensive here. And then looking at the exterior, I must say this is probably one of those cars that you either like or don't like. I'm not a massive fan of how it looks. I think it's a little bit too round and like hippo-like, if I can say that. It's still a good looking car, it's just it's not my favorite to look at. But as you can see, it's very similar to the EQS sedan. It's even got the same wheelbase. I mean, it's the same kind of platform, you know, to start with anyway. But yeah, as you can see, because it's an EV, there's no need for a grill up front here. So you've got this hard plastic, and this has got the AMG line kit too. So it does look a lot more striking and a lot more sporty as well. You've also got these headlights, which are very cool, and also they light up the road, they block out all the oncoming traffic. They're very smart, they're very clever, and I like them a lot. But part of the optional extras are also these AMG wheels, which look very, very cool. And as you can see, they've also got that styling here, which is supposed to make them more aerodynamic as well. You've also got these running boards with also the rubber inserts there, optional extras. But making your way down the car, you'll see here, it's also got the handles that tuck away and come out when you ask it. Well, when I ask it now, come on, there you go. That's quite cool. And also when the car's locked and you walk up to it, the handles also pop out as well. So yeah, here's a look at it from the side. Station wagony, but more SUV than that because it's still quite high. But it's also got the sloping roofline at the back here, and with the addition of the black roof and all of that, it does make it look like it's coming a lot lower than what it is. And then just like all of the EQS, or not EQS, all of the EQ models from Mercedes-Benz, you've got the light bar that runs from side to side. But I've always been a fan of how they've inserted these details, like these 3D looking elements into the rear LED tail lights at the back here. I think that's very cool, and I love the way they look on all of the EQ models from Mercedes-Benz. And Mercedes still aren't going to hide away from the fact that they're putting fake exhaust surrounds on a car that's completely electric. It's not even based off of a petrol version. Like, from the ground up, this is electric, so that shouldn't even be there. But then taking a quick look into the boot, one pop and it opens up. And then in here you can see this enormous space that you've got back here. Unfortunately, again, this is the S-Class version, but there's no buttons or anything to even push down those seats. And I think that that's important because as big as what this boot is, I mean, I can barely even reach these seats to push them down if I wanted to. So that's a bit of a waste. And underneath here, you've got a tire repair kit, and that's it, because no spare wheel and a whole bunch of batteries underneath there, so there isn't even space to put one. But yeah, that's it for the luggage space and the boot. Close it up, and there you go, the outside of the EQS. I do need to give a little bit more love to the Hyperscreen. I know I'm not a major fan of it. I do think it's too expensive. It is still very cool though. It looks rad. Just the high definitionness of the screen here is like, it's unbelievable. It's super responsive too, so it's not really laggy at all. And if you look at the maps also, you can get this 3D look of all the buildings around you now. Yeah, that's not going to make you get to your destination any sooner or any better, but it's still really cool. They've put a lot of thought into this. You've got all of the settings that you would have had from the previous one. It's just obviously a lot more advanced. It's a lot bigger, and there's a lot more to do inside there, even games. So while you're charging the car, you can play games. There's not a lot of games, but you can still have fun playing here on the screen. Otherwise, you can also just watch some Netflix or watch YouTube or do stuff on the internet, because there is a browser. So once you're connected, you can keep yourself busy while charging the car, or just waiting to pick up your next pickup, because you're going to be chauffeuring people around in the EQS SUV off-road, because you can. Now, if you're interested in getting an EQS, an S-Class, or any Mercedes-Benz for that matter, then go check one out on changecars.co.za. They're a website that sells new and used cars, but the best thing about them is that they check and vet every single dealership that sells cars on their website, so they know who they are and they know what they're selling. So you're going to get great quality cars and really good service. Their website is also a hub for everything automotive. So you can go and watch car reviews, you can read articles, you can even go and do financial things like go and see what you can afford per month through their monthly finance calculator. And if you bring them a quote from any dealership that's not on their website, not only will they match it, but they'll beat it too. So there's a lot of great things about changecars.co.za. Go check them out. They're also a proud partner of Greg Dennis Reviews. And now for the verdict in the form of the GDR test. Should you get it, drive it, or remove it from the list of cars that you're looking at? Now for me, if you're in the market for an ultra luxury all-electric SUV like this, then go and get it. I mean, there's not a lot of options out there when looking for a car of this magnitude, the size, what it has to offer, the luxuriness, the all-electric, the range. It's not like we've got a whole bunch of other Tesla options here either. So if you've got the money, if you're looking for something like this, then go and get it. Now, if you enjoyed this review and learned a little bit more about this car, and just about electric cars in general, then please will you drop a like below. And if you want to see more car reviews like this and other car related content, then make sure that you're subscribed. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.